Hello, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us for today's TIA live stream. We're excited to have you join us for this sneak peek of our upcoming carrier sales course, Tools, Tactics, and Trust Building for Brokers, with our instructor, Eileen Dabrowski. She will be introducing herself further shortly. We just have a few housekeeping items to get through, everyone. But thank you again for joining us, and we appreciate your time today, and we look forward to hearing from you. Starting off, my name is Anthony. I am the host for today's webinar. I'm the Senior Education Manager here at TIA, and I work with all of our students and our members to help put on these courses with our instructors. So today we're going to be diving into this carrier sales course, which starts next week. Additionally, you can sign up for this course via the TI website, and we will be putting some comments in the chat with the direct link. But as always, you can reach out to education@tianet.org with any questions, and we will get back to you as soon as possible. Additionally, just before we get started, when you want to come back to this webinar and watch the recording of this live stream, you can come back to wherever you are watching it currently. So if you're watching it on LinkedIn, you can go back to that event. And if you're watching it on YouTube, you can also go back there. With that, Eileen, would you like to give a quick intro, please?
Yeah, good afternoon or morning, depending on where you are. I am so excited to teach this course. Carrier sales has always been a passion of mine. To me, there's nothing like being in the trenches, doing that load-to-load negotiation. And especially in this market, a course like this is going to be extra important. So the high-level version of who I am and how I ended up here, I started my career in academia. So I'm a huge nerd and college professor who accidentally ended up in the transportation 3PL world a long time ago. And I started my career working for a family-owned and operated asset-based 3PL called Reed TMS Logistics. Worked there in a variety of capacities, which you hear me talk about over the course of this LinkedIn Live. And in 22, we were acquired by a company some of you might have heard of called Warner Enterprises. So I worked at Warner Enterprises mainly on the logistics side from 22 to earlier this year. And now that I am out on my own as Apex Tide Consulting, I now work directly with a variety of transportation companies, all of whom are logistics based, as well as some tech partners, helping them understand our industry and working to drive forward best practice. So carrier sales is something I touch and do every day. And I have the pleasure of working with some pretty great freight brokers and cradle to grave freight brokers. So I'm really excited to share more about that as we get into this preview.
Thanks, Eileen. I appreciate that. And again, everyone, if you have any comments or questions, please feel free to submit them where you can, whether you're on LinkedIn or YouTube. We should be able to see your comments. And if you'd rather email your question or comment in to education@tianet.org, that is more than acceptable. So thank you, Eileen, for that. And we're going to dive into some questions here, everyone, and just start a little conversation about this. And again, if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. So Eileen, we're going to start with the first question. Just generally, who is this course designed for?
Yeah, that's a great question, Anthony. I think one of the things that makes our industry challenging on top of being in a really challenging market and kind of economy. I mentioned this yesterday on a podcast, but it's just very hard and expensive to be a human alive in today's world. And I think that that's further compounded when we think about the cost of operating a tractor trailer and maintaining that tractor trailer and taking care of drivers. So it's important for us to not only understand how it is for us as 3PL representatives, but also for our carriers that we work with. And I'm really big on kind of finding that balance. So whether you are brand new to the industry, this is your first go as carrier sales, you're less than a year in, or you've been booking freight for 25 years, I think one of the things that we forget because we're so buried in the trenches at the load level, putting out fires, negotiating in a really tough market is to take it back to the basics. And what I love about this course is that it's going to provide an overview of kind of general carrier sales tools, tips, tactics, strategies. We're going to do a lot of interactive. Here's some exercises you can take back and then make your own personal brand, because every company is a bit different. The service that they sell is a bit different. So how do you negotiate with authority, with confidence, with swag, while adhering to your internal organization's kind of policies, standards, and service offerings? So I welcome all. We designed this course to be applicable to brand new folks, as well as enhance what our veteran carrier sales reps are doing in the industry.
Thank you, Eileen. Appreciate those details. Moving on to the next question now. So what are a few small sneak peeks you could give us for some topics that will be covered when we start the course next week? And just why should people attend this course, Eileen?
Yeah, so first of all, I love that this course is virtual. So some of it will be, you'll be live with me. Some of it will be pre-recorded, because we know how hard it is to sit in the desk and do your job on top of learn, on top of, put out fires and do all of the other duties as assigned. So we're really big on offering courses that are meant to be something you can go back and review and work through. So I'm really excited about the format. The other thing that I think, before we start talking about sneak peeks, that's really important about this course is the timing. So Q4 for most of us is a really difficult time. We deal with multiple holidays, changes in shipper and receiver hours. Our truck drivers also want to spend time with their family whenever possible. So we need to kind of be mindful of all the things that are already going to make a difficult, kind of complex market and economic state more complicated. So there's no better time than when you're in the trenches or when you're going into a really difficult time to take a few moments and take it back down to the basics and the nuts and bolts of carrier sales. Because the better you are at that foundational process, the better you are going to be at the load level, and the better you're going to be able to take care of your carriers. And I think that that's the most important thing that I try to teach is you can have the best shippers and the best freight in the world as a 3PL, and that's phenomenal. But if you don't have solid carriers in your base who are true, your go-to core carriers, and you understand their business so that you can match that carrier's business with your shipper's business, you're going to lose that shipper business. So I believe in taking care of both sides of the street. Take care of our carriers as much as we take care of our shippers, because we need them both to thrive in the 3PL world. So I'm really big on paying it forward and kind of understanding that and letting that be the foundation for what we're going to cover. Now, in terms of some kind of high level sneak peeks about the course, some of the things that I'm excited about are systematic carrier outreach. So right now we're in a really saturated capacity market. There's lots of brokers, there's capacity, some of it's displaced, there's lots of things going on. So how do you turn what used to be the old spray and pray type mentality, I'm just going to reach out to a blast of carriers or shippers for that matter, into a targeted, who is in your ICP? What lanes do you need covered? What equipment do you need? Whether you're doing dray, intermodal, truckload, LTL, hazmat, right? Or if it's vertical specific, you have to know how to match your shipper's business that you have been awarded with carrier's business. And I believe in getting to know carriers beyond kind of the standard questions. What's your MC? Where's your home base? Where are you domiciled? Things like that. I want to know about them as humans. What holidays are important to them? That's really important as we go into Q4. What is their family situation like? Do they have kids? Because if you can get a carrier home for a family event that matters to them, that often goes more than the price tag. And I think we get so hung up on the day-to-day surviving at the load level that we forget that our carriers are humans. And we lose sight of that. So I'm really big on relationship building, understanding true negotiation and sourcing tactics, and especially in a difficult market, but also how to kind of extend your net and your carrier outreach. So a lot of people rely only on load boards. And I think load boards are a part of our environment and our world. But look at your historical data. So we're going to be talking a lot about that. What carriers have you run in the past that maybe you haven't used recently? What's going on with their business? Do you understand how a single load affects your carrier's business? Another topic we're going to cover is how to balance margin, service, and speed. So urgency is something Chris Jolly and I actually just talked about yesterday, the urgency of response. Urgency of response. If we need a load covered, we need to be mindful of how that load impacts our carriers. So if we set them up for failure and they go in to pick up a load and it sets all their other future loads that they're already scheduled up to be late, then we're doing a disservice to not only our business, but to theirs. So I'm really big on striving towards equal business stature and understanding how every load affects all the people we work with, our carriers, as well as our shippers. Another thing we're going to talk about is how to further build that durable carrier network. So I call them core carriers. Each organization calls them a little bit slightly different word, but these are your go-to carriers who are going to run for you no matter what. That you keep going with consistent business, because the reality is carriers would rather work with as few brokers as possible, right? They want to work with true relationship carriers or brokers who understand their business and how each load you give them feeds their bottom line. So I'm really big on that. How can we strategically source, negotiate, and match shipper and carrier business to make everybody happy, which I know is sometimes impossible. So we're going to talk about that. But that durable carrier network is critical, especially in this market. Everyone keeps hoping that 2026 is going to be a bit better. And of course, do I hope that too? But I also think we should buckle up and do everything we can. And that's why I'm such a big advocate for let's take it back to the foundational level. Let's talk about best practice that we can do to help prepare us if this market does not shift in the way that we, fingers crossed, hope it does. And then the last preview I'll give you in terms of tactic is effective negotiation. So thinking beyond the load level, what can you sell? There's no such thing as an ideal load for every carrier. So what carriers can you market each load to? Again, that goes back to knowing who they are, where their power lanes are, where their home base is, and what they like to run and what they're comfortable moving. And I'm really big on kind of the framing aspect. So if you know you have a difficult load, we're going to talk about strategies to effectively sell that with transparency and integrity, because we can't wrap up a really crappy situation and sell it as gold. That's doing our shippers a disservice as well as our carriers. So we're going to be talking about creative ways to sell some challenging freight as well.
Perfect. Thank you, Eileen, for those details there. And everyone, hopefully that sparked some question or some feedback, anything like that. We did have a comment on LinkedIn. This is exactly the type of conversation the industry needs: consistent carrier engagement, data-driven sales, and sustainable growth. Appreciate the TIA and Eileen for leading the charge. Thank you for that comment and that feedback. Again, if anyone has any comments, any feedback, please feel free to send in an email or post a comment just like that.
I love it. And Anthony, something else that we can talk about are some of the takeaways. So I mentioned some of the sneak peeks in terms of some of the content that we're going to be going through. And what are some of the strategies that I know when we were building this really stood out to me that I wish I would have had when I was a green bean in carrier sales and literally just was doing whatever I could. It was probably even worse than the spray and pray type model. I was just grasping at straws. I didn't understand the power of understanding who has power in that negotiation. If I'm making an outbound call, The person I'm calling has the power because there's an obvious differential there. I need them more than they need me. On the flip side, if my phone is ringing and somebody's calling in about a load, that gives me a little bit more negotiation power. So it's important to kind of understand where are you in that dynamic and how can you add value to the people in your life. So some other takeaways, we talked about tailored negotiation strategies. One of the things that I'm going to encourage everybody to think about who's participating in this course is, what is your company's ICP? Or do you have multiple ICPs? So ideal client profile, your ideal shipper profile. Looking at your base of carriers, especially your go-to core carriers, your relationship carriers, what makes sense for you to set up a routing guide for? How can you automate some of that booking so that when you call them, it's to check on how they're doing as humans? Hey, is everything still good? Is there anything you need me to do differently, better? How are you doing? I heard your kid just won their softball game, right? The human element, because that's a differentiator right now. So just keep that in mind. Tailored negotiation strategies are key, especially in difficult markets and oversaturated markets like we're in. I mentioned this earlier. I'm going to mention it throughout the course, but understanding timing, a sense of urgency, quick responsiveness. When we think about the entire life cycle of a load as a logistics professional, there's really only two things we can control: who we put behind the wheel, that carrier qualification and vetting. And I'm very proud to say this course is sponsored by Highway. So great tech there. And then your internal company carrier qual and vetting procedures. So whatever your tech is and your internal policies, and then how we communicate. That's it. Everything else is left up to whatever you believe or don't believe in, your kumbayas, your prayers, your hopes and your dreams. So if we can focus on those two things, understanding who we're putting behind the wheel and making sure that our business matches theirs and they're a good fit for us, and then streamlining our communication process, which is something else we're going to talk about in the course, you're gonna further set yourself up for success. And I think that that's really important in this market. So urgency matters, time matters. We know that seconds can cost us that carrier, can cost us that load. And there's nothing worse than giving back freight in this market. So anything we can do to prevent that. Another thing we're going to talk about is the importance in documentation, carrier offers, lane capacity, performance, carrier scorecarding, your carrier sales scorecarding. So are you understanding how what you do impacts the larger team? What does your collaboration with the shipper-facing sales team look like? Or are you in a cradle to grave type model where you're responsible for all of it? Documentation is what allows us to go back to that later and ensure that we're not missing out on quality top tier carriers because we forget about them. And we only rely on systems, and tech are only as good as the data we put in. So keep that in mind. The more you put in, I'm not saying write a novel, but at least the basics is going to help set you up for success. So we're going to talk about that. And then sourcing capacity early. So I always recommend being interconnected with your shipper facing sales team if you're not wearing both hats. So every time you have an RFP or a bid coming down the pike, what are you doing to prepare for that? We always, as a 3PL, want to go to market with a truck in hand. That should be our ultimate goal. We shouldn't be sourcing capacity, although we have to sometimes, and we're going to talk about that as well. But we want to be able to know that when that RFP hits us and we get awarded business, I already know who I can call because I've already had that conversation, and I can be sure that I'm going to deliver the top tier service that I have promised our shipper. And carriers are an integral part of that. And I think that that's one of the things that we forget about as humans. We got to take care of the people who take care of us. So I'm excited. That's just some of what we're going to talk about. But I'm incredibly passionate about this topic, as hopefully you can tell.
Thank you, Eileen. I appreciate that. And everyone, as you can see, we're coming at this with a very unique perspective. And we're hoping to bring, some things into this course that you might not have thought about, as Eileen is mentioning.
Mhm.
Again, we would love to hear from you if you have any questions, comments, anything like that, or you'd like to email us a question. Please feel free to send an email to education@tinet.org with the subject live stream. And we'll also be taking any questions after this live stream. If you'd like to email us, that is more than okay. Eileen, moving on from there, we're going to shift to some other high level talking points about the course, and relating it back to where brokers are in the current day in 2025. So, what to you does a strong carrier sales operation look like in 25, with everything that you have in the background and what you've seen with brokers, even at the earlier TIA Capital Ideas conference in San Antonio, where we had the Saturday Sales Success Summit, where we had a very in-depth training with those TIA members and those attendees. What would you say are some things that carrier sales team operations look like?
Yeah, so I said it. I was one of the facilitators at that Sales Success Summit that was held right after Capital Ideas, which was awesome because I got to learn as much from the other presenters of that course as I hope that attendees learned from me. One of the things that I think is really important about carrier sales teams that are set up for success, and I already mentioned some of this, but I'll give you kind of a high level 30,000 foot approach. So organizations that are thriving right now have done, let's call it, four things: invested in their people. So get the right people in the right seats, right? There's development that has to be done. So ongoing coaching, right? Here's what you're doing well. Hey, have you tried this instead of that, right? Real moment coaching, feedback, one-on-ones, things like that. Development, take a TIA course, for example, further your learning. I start my day every day by reading what's going on in the industry. I go to all my industry publications. How does that affect the people I work with and my business? How are tariffs impacting? That's a game we play every single day because it's a little bit different. How is English competency impacting capacity in certain key markets? Things like that. So invest in your people. And to everyone listening who's in the business, I would say don't forget to invest in yourself. We are as good as kind of what we put in. And I think one of the things that has allowed me to enter this juncture of my career is I always invested in myself, paid for myself to attend a conference, learned something new every day, went out of my way to challenge myself. So even if you don't have the budget to attend, what can you do virtually to pivot? And who can you build in a network? So invest in people, and that includes yourself. Next is invest in process. So, what is your process to get a carrier offer? What is your process to source capacity? What is your carrier qual or vetting process? What are your deal breakers? What are your insurance requirements? How do you properly qualify a carrier beyond the basics? What are you looking for them to be a true carrier, core carrier for you? That goes down to tracking. What are your tracking requirements? Do you have a process for everything? I'm a process documentation girl. I believe in having a work instruction, SOP process for just about everything. And the organizations that I work with that are the most successful have really solid, I don't want to say dummy proof, but so basic that it's like step one, do this, picture. Step two, do this, picture. Right? As booking freight sounds easy, but if you miss a single step, again, it's like dominoes. So people, process, next is tech. So invest in your tech. Are you using your tech stack correctly? Are you missing something in your tech stack? And that's some of what we're going to talk about, because the other thing that, has to be talked about in this course and in what we do every day is all the fraud going on. You'll hear it a bunch at every conference you attended. I just had the pleasure of being at the Broker Carrier Summit in Orlando, where brokers and carriers were coming together, and everyone is impacted by fraud. I'm going to be at Technovation starting tomorrow in Phoenix, and I guarantee you fraud is going to be top of the mind, top of the topic. So that's why that process is really important. But you'll notice I put people first. People, then process, then tech, right? And most people that I work with are not using their tech stack to their fullest capabilities, right? So our technology that we invest in does a lot of really cool things. Do we know about it? Does our team know about it? Are you getting feedback from your team about how it is? I'm big on let's have revenue generators waste as little time as possible with things that are not generating revenue, kind of like a CRM or a TMS. How can I streamline or automate processes to allow people to focus on relationship building? And I think that those are three really solid things that if you combine it with the fourth, which is change management, employee feedback, kind of a circular approach, those are the most successful operational and organizational teams that I've seen for 3PLs across the world. The other thing that people don't love to hear, but we have to play nice if you're not in a cradle to grave model with our friends who sit across the street in shipper facing sales. So if you can create some rapport, I'm not saying you have to agree or be BFFs or do anything like that, but if you can agree or at least know what's going on in each other's buckets, you should be telling them when capacity is tight. You should be telling them when it's difficult to cover a load. You should be telling them when you can't get a load covered. And on the flip side, they should prep you as much as possible if they know they have business coming down the pike, especially if it could be a difficult cover. So how can you create that interconnectivity and collaboration? I'm really big, and it's just like any relationship, it takes work. So if you do those things that I mentioned, I think organizations are going to be set up for success in 2025, what we have left of it, and beyond.
Thank you, Eileen. Great recap there. Again, anyone, any questions or comments before we start to wrap this up, please send them in. We'd love to hear from you. And Eileen, just moving on from there, I mean, you touched on tech a little, and then, we're emphasizing relationships today and starting first with the people, which I love to hear. One question I have is, you mentioned, are you missing something with your tech stack, especially with fraud? In your perspective, I guess with the carrier sales lens, how have you seen things evolve with tech and carrier sales, and I guess adding that into the process, over, I guess, the past 5 or 2 or so years? And on the flip side, how would you see that evolving based on how things have come to be?
Yeah, so I can't even, when I first started in this industry, which was shamefully long ago now at this point, we forget that we are still very old school in lots of ways. When you think about how little has truly changed over time, the reality is we have new shiny toys, better equipment, definitely some new tech, but we still pick up a load in location A, and the goal is to deliver it in location B. So the sheer mechanics at the baseline level have not really changed. What has changed is the tech that we use to automate and make that process quicker. Real-time tracking, visibility, right? There's some great tech. I'm actually personally excited to attend Technovations just to hear further about the emerging tech, because I think emerging tech is something to watch. What I love that has emerged in the past, like let's call it 5 years, enhanced carrier vetting qualification, integrated with your email. So as you're typing an email, it's doing stuff in the side. The other thing that I love to see, a lot of people ask me, do you think AI is going to replace people? I think AI is going to free up people so that we can work better at fostering what we're good at, and that's relationships. I think there could be some jobs that change, especially on the carrier sales side, but I see AI more assisting a carrier sales rep than replacing a carrier sales rep. AI is meant to alleviate or get things started or automate. And same thing with our tech partners. The thing is, you can invest with a ton of tech, whether it's carrier vetting. I don't know if you've heard of a really cool tech. I'll give a shout out to kind of an emerging tech brand called Genlogs that I recently saw. State of the art tech that has cameras strategically placed out that pulls images and helps with stolen loads, whether or not you're a client or not. Right? Because the reality is, when we're in a difficult market, we tend to see crime go up because people get more desperate. They can't pay their bills. Right? So we've seen an uptick in fraud and theft and stolen loads in shape. That's true, but I also think it's also very publicized now. right? We're really good at capturing data in a way that we haven't been. And you can't go anywhere without a camera catching you to some capacity. So it's been really neat to see what we have, where we had made advancements in, you know, tracking, automated tracking, in temperature controlled systems in trailers, right? That can prevent claims earlier, in claims prevention, in employee mitigation. TMSs are having constant updates. CRMs are now integrating with TMSs. It's wonderful. Same thing with phones. Call scripting can be automated. Load entry can be automated to a certain point. Even appointment scheduling with another company who's going to be at Technovations can be automated and take away that manual aspect of doing things. That's the coolest thing for me. But what I'll say is kind of what I say a lot of my clients that I work with now. You don't want to overinvest in tech until you've really clearly defined your people, your process, and what you need. Because you shouldn't just buy tech because it's a new shiny toy. You should buy tech because you believe it's an investment to make life better for your number one asset, which is your people. So I'm really excited to see the emerging tech at Capital Ideas, or at Technovations and Capital Ideas in 26. But one of the things that I look forward to getting out of this course, even though that I'm the instructor, is what are the people attending the course using? Because I love hearing, okay, here's what I'm using and here's what I love about it and here's what I don't love about it, because that's really good feedback. And what I'll say about the vast majority of our tech partners within the logistics space, they want that feedback. They want to be better. They want to know that their product is going to help people in a profound way. And I think that that's a really awesome, unique thing. So I'm happy to share that feedback as we go through the course. I want to learn from the folks who are attending as much as I hope that they learn from me and the course.
Perfect. Thank you, Eileen. And again, everyone, final reminder as we begin to wrap things up. If you have any comments, questions, we'd love to hear from you. Eileen, maybe we can start with the last two or so questions. Sure. Is there anything you'd like to, leave people with as they are starting to, process some of the things we've talked about today, and maybe think about how some of those these aspects apply to their own operations or their own teams, or maybe even their past teams where things went wrong and they could have improved things? What are some things you would leave people with after the webinar, the live stream today?
I love that. So first thing I'll say, and I say this to almost everybody I work with, is trust your gut. If you get a rate that seems too good to be true, if you get a carrier that seems to be a diamond that has fallen into your lap at 3 p.m., dig into it, right? If it seems too good to be true, especially in carrier sales in this market, I'm going to challenge you to at least dig deeper. I hope a diamond fell out of the sky. And I hope that that is truly a wonderful situation. But with everything going on, I think that human element, if something makes you a little bit uneasy, I say trust it. The other thing that I love to see people do is share with your team. One of the things that we tend to protect in organizations is capacity, right? Well, those are my carriers. Understand that, and we should always have, a point of contact or one or two points of contact with that carrier. But you should also be communicating with your internal team if you have a challenge, right? If there's a case of fraud, if a load is stolen, if you're not getting communication, or if your business changed and you want to keep that carrier, how can somebody else in your team leverage that carrier's capacity to keep them moving and keep them working with you? Instead of going mine, I'm big on how can I make this work for the organization and my team to keep that carrier moving and happy. So, right, trust your gut. Be open, transparent with your capacity, kind of share with your friends. And then I mentioned it earlier, but be aware what's going on in the market. Every day, even if all you have is 5 minutes, I try to start and end my day by seeing okay, what imploded or what's going on, and then end it the same way, because that's how quickly things change. And I think it's really important to be able to do your job better to stay on top of that. And that's some of the things that we'll talk about in the course is understanding your day and how to plan your day. And that might depend on what time zone you're in, what type of freight you're booking. If you're booking West Coast freight, you probably shouldn't come in at 6 a.m. Eastern, because that's not going to really be great for folks. And on the flip side, if you're, working in Eastern time, you have to be mindful not to call our friends out West super, super early in the morning, because that's not very nice. Nobody likes to be woken up. So I think at the end of the day, my biggest takeaway is, regardless of what your role is, how big your organization is, what your ICP is, remember that human element that is at the core of everything we do. Take care of the people who take care of you. If your carriers take care of you, I am not a fan of canceling to make an extra 15 bucks or whatever amount of money. Honor that. Take care of the people who've taken care of you, especially in difficult markets, and it'll come back.
Perfect. Thank you, Eileen. That's a great wrap up. And everyone just has a few final reminders before we close things off today. Registration is open for this course currently. It begins next week on Monday, and it goes until the next week, Friday, November 21st. So, you will have, as Eileen mentioned, different modules for you to access and, go through at your own pace, in addition to live events with Eileen, the instructor here, and with your other students and the other students in your cohort. So please check it out. If you have not taken a virtual instructor live training with us this year, we have a range of topics, and this is actually the first time we're having a carrier sales course. So thank you to Eileen, and thank you to Highways for sponsoring this course. So registration right now for TI members is open for $300. We do have, you can sign up multiple people on your team. That is available. You're also able later on to access the recordings if you're unable, if you can't take it in the next few weeks. Completely understandable. Also, just as another reminder, we touched on this at the beginning, but when you're ready to come back to this recording and recap some of these things, please either visit back to the LinkedIn live event or the YouTube live stream where you watch this. And please feel free to share this with your team members. If, Eileen, I'm sure, had some nuggets of wisdom that your team members or, your people you manage could use in their day-to-day. With that, Eileen, did I miss anything, before we wrap everything up? I know we have a lot of little housekeeping items for everyone, but.
Yeah, no, I just think, no matter, I mentioned this at the start, but in case you're just tuning in, no matter your experience level, my goal is to create value for you. I'm really big on ROI. So, and not everybody can make it out to a conference or, do a full, certification course. So this is a great way to ensure that you're constantly moving the needle without having a huge impact to your bottom line. So I'm really excited. I plan on making this as exciting and engaging and real as possible, because I'm big on creating value for folks. So I hope to see you next week. I'm available. Anthony's available. The TIA team is available if you have any questions, and we are happy to get back to you.
Perfect. Thank you, Eileen. And thank you, everyone, for attending today. We hope to see you next week and in the next live stream. So with that, we will see you, and I hope you have a great rest of your day. Thank you, everyone, and thank you, Eileen. Appreciate it. Bye-bye.